So in one of my last videos a few months ago, I was talking about how I actually power the modular synth. And I started off with one of these kits provided by Christian, who does modular in a week. And the way these work, they take in a 12 volt AC signal, which is great because it means you don't have to mess with any mains current. And it rectifies that so you end up with plus 12 volts, minus 12 volts, and also 5 volts. And that's what you need for your synthesizer. Now, this was a really great low-cost solution, but one of the things that I found frustrating about it is that sometimes the positive rail doesn't start up. And what happens is if the negative regulator starts before the positive regulator, it can pull the positive regulator down negative, and that actually stops it starting up. Now, I did a bit of research. People have already found the solution to that, and that's to include a Schottky diode in the design. So I thought it'd be cool to make my own. And I did this as a design project in KiCad. So my original design, I deliberately made as teeny tiny as I physically could, and it's a really lovely little board. And I was very happy with it, except when I came to build it, I couldn't get the right size capacitors. So I ended up with this sort of weirdly hench and crowded board, and it kind of looks like the regulators are waiting in line to get into a nightclub and being intimidated by these big, scary bouncers. So in case you don't know, these regulators have metal tabs on here to help dissipate heat. And you can also clip a heatsink to them. So obviously with them being so crowded like this, the airflow is not great. So although I was quite happy with this in terms of functionality, there was definitely room for improvement. So then I went on and did V2, which is a bigger board, but we've got a lot more space for the regulators, and also this was designed in a way that I could put it into my modular case. So I went full power station control / might be able to launch a nuclear missile, and designed a front panel that would take 3 of these panels in the back. So what I was then essentially doing is splitting the load of my modular synth, because each one of these is probably good for about an amp on each rail, because the voltage regulators are good for about an amp. So that's where I got to with my power design. And what I thought it might be fun to do today would just be to share a build. So that's where I got to with my power supply design. I'm really happy with it, but what I thought might be cool today would just be to talk through building an individual one of these power modules, because you can build them in standalone mode too. Okay, so excuse the fan noise. I've been doing a lot of soldering lately, breathing in a lot of lead fumes, and it's really not good for me, so I'm going to have to run the fan for this one. Okay, on with the build. Let's start with the resistors. I have 4.7k, and that's current limiting for the input voltage LED. It's funny how as soon as you start doing this on camera, you immediately become incredibly ham-fisted. And I've got some 1k resistors here. These are current limiting for the individual indicator lights on the board. One of them, the blue one, says 800 because blue LEDs have a lower forward voltage than some of the other colours. But that's okay. I've tested it with a K and that's all fine. I'm sort of leaning weirdly over the workbench so that you can see what I'm doing, so that's my excuse for crap soldering. that's the LEDs. Okay, that's the resistors in, just give them a trim. Got these new snips from Thunk, and they're spring loaded, so they're kind of like a sort of siege weapon. You can get some good range on your bits of shards of flying metal. Okay, let's get some diodes in next. Now, most of these diodes are 1N4001, just sort of standard rectifier diodes. But one of them is a Schottky, and the point in the Schottky, it has a really low voltage. What that means is it sort of clamps the positive voltage regulator to make sure it can't be pulled below about 0.3 volts, or negative 0.3 volts, I should say. And that's enough to stop the positive regulator sort of seizing up and not turning on if the negative regulator starts first. So it's important that the Schottky is the one that actually goes where it's labelled. So don't sort of change it for one of the 1400000ends. Okay, so 1N4001, 1N5817, and nice, that's terrible, but polarity that way around. So that's your Schottky, and I've put a box around it on the board to make it more obvious that it's different. Okay, again, just with the 1N4001s, just observing the polarity with the stripes. And most of these are acting as rectifiers, and some of them are also acting as sort of safety in case of short, so that we don't burn anything out. Oops, that's backwards. I've not been making a lot of build videos recently because we've not having a great deal of free time. It was more important for me to actually crack on and build stuff. But this is quite self-contained, and I've made a few of these now, so it should be fairly quick. Also, I'm actually off work with COVID, but being paid to make a video, so that's quite nice. Although not being in work sucks. Oh, it's so awkward doing this, leaning over the bench. Okay, stripe, 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 stripe. They all look good, let's get them in. Also, these components that have a polarity to them, they have different shape pads. I think the square pad is always the negative. Let's check. Yeah. It's just another nice sense check that you're actually putting things in the right way around. These are big, thick legs. These are slightly higher current. And when I originally built a prototype, I used a small signal diode, and it made a really delicious smell and quite a loud pop. Interestingly, the first prototype I made of this power supply, it worked absolutely fine without load, and it put all the right voltages out. But as soon as it was under any load, it starts pulling any sort of current. Those small signal diodes aren't up to it, and they just pop. But, you know, my biggest fear with building this was somehow I'd get the polarity wrong with those absolutely enormous capacitors, because I reckon if one of them goes up, you'll know about it. So I'm making it sound like some sort of war zone when it's actually just a bit of hot fluid exploding out of a valve. Okay, that's done. Let's tidy them up. The amount of metal that's now ingrained in our carpet is really quite impressive. Okay. Yeah, that looks not too bad. What else? What else have we got on here? That's all the little stuff done. Let's put the caps in, small caps first. So we've got some 1 microfarad and a 220 for the 5-volt rail. So this is the equivalent of these big mamas, but for the 5-volt rail, because you don't need as much storage to smooth that. Anyway, again, looking out for the polarity on these. Stripe goes to stripe. Get in. So I'll do 220 at the same time. Get that nice and flush. I do have a clamp that I can use to hold the board steady, but I'm just too lazy to go and get it and attach it to the desk, to be honest. And it would stop this wobbling about when I'm trying to solder it. There's quite a lot of flux coming out, so I'll clean up later. Quite tricky with these really small parts. These ones are okay. I'm doing that one. Yeah. Okay. I was probably thinking about something else. I was re-watching the Iron Man films, and in the first one, which, as an aside, I think has the best opening of a film, pretty much any film ever. I mean, that first few minutes where they set up his character as a kind of misogynistic but lovable arsehole, and they set up the soldiers, and, you know, he's drinking whiskey in the back of a military vehicle, and then all hell breaks loose. Oh, God, that's such a good opener. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, but yeah, there's a bit in the first Iron Man film where he wipes his solder. He wipes his soldering iron on his cleaning sponge in what can only be described as a sort of Laotian erotic way, and, you know, it's something that I've been sort of trying to emulate ever since I saw it, but I'm not sure I've quite got there yet. Okay, that's the little caps in. Shall we do the big ones or the connectors next? Let's do the connectors. Okay, where's my tape? So, again, being lazy, I can't be bothered getting my clamp, so I'm just going to use some electrical tape. And this is the output where we'll actually get the power out to go and power the modules. And there's a notch in there and a notch on the board. And that's just to make sure, basically, we're going to have minus 12 volts at this end, then 3 lots of ground, plus 12 volts, plus 5, and then the top two are like data protocols that we won't be using. Okay, so I'm going to tape that on. That's not too bad because it stands at the same height as the capacitors, which means I can push down on it a bit. And this is really difficult leaning over the bench. I do think about Iron Man quite a lot. Should we talk to someone about that? That's a horrible joint. Okay, so I'm doing the four corners first because that way it's kind of stable. I basically spent all of yesterday soldering really nicely and no one saw. I gave myself a headache. But it was all for naught because I didn't video it. Yeah, that's fine. Just checking that the piece is actually flush with the board before I go ahead and do the rest of the pins. Oh, it's raining. I'm in a conservatory with a plastic roof and it's bloody cold. I think there's a reason why like Mum No Computer videos, he speeds the build bits up. You just get to listen to me talk shit for like 10 minutes. If you watch, I mean, who even are you? Okay, that's done. If you ever worried that you might have bridged these, you can just do a continuity check with a multimeter. I don't think that looks too bad. Alright, this is a little socket. If you're building this as a panel build, this small socket is where the mains voltage, well not mains, the 12 volt AC will come in. I don't actually need it for standalone mode, but I think I'm going to reuse this from the project later, so while I'm here, might as well pop it on. And that feels like it's moved quite a bit, so let's have a look. Oh, it's not too bad. Just give it a push. Yeah, that'll do. Where's the other bit? There we go. Nice. Okay, shall we do the big ones? So if you, I only realised recently that the reason the top is shaped like this is actually a release valve, so that if this does pop, all of the sort of fluids will just come out the top rather than the whole thing shattering. So I guess it's it's fairly idiot proof, but yeah, I still don't want to fire a load of hot electrolyte into my face. Moving on. Okay, Big Mama number 1. And number 2, again, watching the polarity as per the board. And this is where the clamp would be really useful because it's going to wobble about, but that's okay. just resting a finger on it to stabilise it. No, I really suck today. The fan is doing piss all, it's too far away. Okay, it's starting to look like something. Oh, do you know what I forgot? Because we're doing this in standalone mode, we need a barrel jack. It would have been easier to put this on before the big ones were in place, but that's okay. With these thick pads, it's good to get quite a lot of coverage because obviously it's an electrical contact, but also it's a mechanical potential point of weakness because of the barrel jack sort of being plugged and then unplugged. This one's just drinking the solder, I don't know where it's going. Okay, it'll look prettier once it's cleaned. It'll have a bit of a spray with isopropyl alcohol. Okay, so voltage regulators and diodes to go. Okay, diodes is confusing because... Oh, and a switch, but I think I'll just bridge that for now. In fact, yeah, let's do that next. So switch 1 has a connection on one side of the board to that pad, and on the back to that pad. The bottom pad is not connected. What I'm going to do for now is just bridge that. I think when I repurpose this later, I'll probably give it a switch, but an off-board switch. So for now, I just want to bridge it just to get it working. Okay. I don't want to go mad on the solder, I'm going to take it apart later. But obviously I need enough to make sure that it is actually making an electrical contact. Fire in the hole! Okay, what's that leave? That's just a mounting screw, not worried about that. Diode, 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 reg. I don't know why, but I quite like putting the regulators in last, so let's have a look at the diode. The diodes are a bit confusing because this is made to be panel mounted, the labels are all on this side. So that's plus there. Minus is the square pad, so if I flip that over, minus is the square pad, and I put it in there, that should be alright. Yeah, minus is the square pad, minus is the square pad. Again, I might pull these out later, because I'm going to make this into a bench power supply, I think. A very cheap bench power supply. Okay, let's have a look at the other ones. So, minus 12 volt, square pad. minus 12 volt square pad, short leg, because again these are of course polarized. There is actually an error. I should point this out. This is the 2.4 of the board. It's been fixed on 2.5, but I've not had any of those manufactured yet. So we've got three individual indicator lights, minus 12, plus 5, and plus 12 volts. And the pads are all right, so all the circle pads are positive, the anode. But there's a mistake in the silk screen, so there's a little plus here next to a square pad, and that shouldn't be there, it should be on the other side. So the plus 12 volt label is incorrect. If you're building this, go by the pads convention. So square pad, negative. Does that make sense? I hope so. Anyway, let's have a look. Square pad, negative, yes. Short leg, short leg, short leg. I feel like I'm talking in code, actually. So on the full panel, these diodes are actually on the front. So if you look from the side, they're on kind of long legs poking through. Same with the 12 volts AC indicator, and the same power, and the switch goes all the way through as well. But this is just to make a little standalone version. Oh, 25 minutes. Anyone still listening? Square, square, short, square, short, square, short. So at least this way, if that Schottky diode didn't work and one of the rails didn't start up, at least you would know that, you know, if this is backwards because of, as I said, it's meant to go on the panel, but it's minus 12 plus 5 plus 12. So if that blue light doesn't come on, either you've got a problem with your blue light, which is possible, or your plus 12 volt rail hasn't started up. So that's why I thought it was actually useful to have these individual indicator lights. Right in the face of them. Just love how this fan is not really helping my lungs, but it is ruining my audio. That was sarcasm. Okay. My eyes. These are the most vicious cyclers I've ever heard, and I love them. Yeah, not terrible, not terrible. Okay, what else? Just the regulators, and then this should be good to go. Okay, let's see what we've got. L7805, so that's 5 volt regulator. And the way that oriented is this sort of stripy bit tells you which side the tab goes, so that goes in there. Just bend the legs to keep it in place for a minute. What else we got? L7912, so that the 9 in there indicates that it's negative, so that's the minus 12 volt regulator. And by process of elimination, L7812. This has a weird plastic tab on it, but as far as I'm aware, it's still there to dissipate the heat. But I don't trust it. I'm very mistrustful. Why is it plastic? I don't know. Okay. Look, just stand on your weird wonky legs. Can you see that? No. Okay, fine. Whatever. And now I'm turning into my dad because I just started tunelessly humming. Whenever I'm nervous, I guess my bad soldering is making me nervous. I don't know. I feel like I'm on a bit of a lose-lose with this video because it's too long to be sort of generally interesting, and it's too noisy to be of interest to the ASMR people, so yeah, I don't know who's going to watch this. Oh. And also, it's, as far as calling cards for my skills go, I'm doing a fucking terrible job. I'm going to check they're not bridged in a sec because I'm not really concentrating, if I'm honest. Just do the thing. Just tighten them up a wee bit. Whoops. Okay, I think that's that. I'm just going to give it a bit of a wipe down with the old isopropyl alcohol and then test it. There we go, that is now one of my rails of my synth running off this very attractively lens flary standalone power supply that we just built.